Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippi, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And week 15 was a great week of NFL action, and it really put even more of the playoff picture into a state of confusion, honestly, because at this point, in previous years, it looked like it was going to start to take shape at this point. But there's so much jumbling around in the bottom spots of the playoff picture that I felt like I just had to go over it a little bit and make my predictions for what I thought was going to happen the rest of the season, who was going to end up getting those playoff spots. And make sure you check out my last video I also uploaded today on Wednesday, breaking down the NFL season week 15. And I just kind of go over the top 7 storylines of week 15 and kind of the things you should expect going forward. But going into the standings here, there are some really interesting points here and storylines as we head into the last few weeks of the NFL season. So we'll go over quickly some of the divisions that could end up still being in a flux state right now. Right now, the Ravens and the Browns are 2 away from each other for that AFC North. And the Ravens, interestingly enough, do play the 49ers and then the Dolphins and then the Steelers to round out their season. So they've got some tough matchups coming up. And as for the Browns, they've got, see here, they've got the Texans, Jets, and Bengals. So Texans, depending on if Stroud comes back, could be a more difficult matchup. Jets should be easy. And then at the Bengals, who knows, Browning's playing pretty well. And so it could end up coming down to the head-to-head where the Ravens won one game and then lost the other. And so it could end up being a little bit of a confusing point here, as right now the Ravens lead the conference 7-3 to 6-3, and they both are tied 3-2 right now within the division. So it really could come down to some really weird tie-breaking procedures if all of those things end up being tied by the end of the season. I still feel like the Ravens should win this division. Of course, I think they'll lose to the 49ers, but it could end up coming down to the Dolphins or the Ravens of which of those two teams will win their division, because both teams are in a flux state for their division. I still think the Ravens should get the job done in this division, though. Dolphins and Bills are also battling it out for the division. Not something you expected to see after the Bills really struggled in the middle part of the season, but they really made a statement against the Cowboys last week. And so now they're 8-6. The Dolphins are 10-4 after they lost to the Titans a couple weeks ago. And so now the Bills actually have a pretty easy schedule leading up to playing the Dolphins. They play at the Chargers, the Chargers that now are not with Herbert anymore and just fired their head coach, at home against a very beatable Patriots team, and then they play at the Dolphins, of course. And then on the Dolphins side, they have a much more difficult matchup coming up in the coming weeks because they have to play at home against the Cowboys. Yes, they got embarrassed against the Bills, but they're still playing some really good football. And then they play at the Ravens before playing the Bills. So I could easily see even if the Dolphins win one of these two games, the Bills would still be able to win that game at the end of the season and beat them out for the AFC East, because the Bills already beat them one time this season, and it was a routing 48-20. So they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Dolphins right now. So all the Bills need to do is to be able to see the Dolphins lose against either the Ravens or the Cowboys, and they just need to take care of business against two of the worst teams in the AFC right now, and it could be up to that game. Now, the question is, can the Bills win that game on the road? And my predictions of how this wild card is going to break down will come down to that. You know what? It's tough, but I feel like the Dolphins will still win this division. I feel like it'll be a very close game between them and the Bills in that final week, where I feel like it will come down to that week. I feel like the Dolphins will lose one of those two games. It's really tough to win both of them, and the Bills will have an opportunity to take this division, but I still feel like the Dolphins are too strong of a team. I feel like they'll end up winning in the AFC East. The rest of the conferences really are not that close. Well, no, hold on. Jaguars, Colts, and Texans are all in a three-way tie for the AFC South. I forgot to mention that. And it really could go either way. I think I'll wait on that one as I go through the wild card standings because so much of that could change. The Chiefs and Broncos right now, I don't see the Broncos catching up to the Chiefs. 9-5 versus 7-7, so technically it could still happen. But I don't think I think the Broncos ran into a little bit of a wall last week, and I don't think they're going to come back from it. I think the Eagles will beat the Cowboys out for the NFC East. I just think the Eagles would have to lose one of their last three matchups of the season in order to lose that NFC East right now, because the only reason that Cowboys have that tiebreaker is because they're 7-3 versus the conference, whereas the Eagles are 6-3. Eventually, of course, the Eagles will get that one more conference game, and if they win it, they would get the tiebreaker again because their strength of victory is better. So the Eagles basically have the division still. I don't think they'll lose against any of the three incredibly easy matchups they have the rest of the season. So that would pretty much solidify the Cowboys in that fifth seed because no one is catching up to them in that fifth seed right now. In the NFC North, the Vikings technically still have a chance to catch up to the Lions because if the Vikings beat the Lions twice at the end of the season, they'd already have that tiebreaker. They would still need the Lions to lose against the Cowboys because they're a full 3 games behind the Lions with 3 games to go. So the Lions would need to lose both games to the Vikings and lose to the Cowboys, and the Vikings would need to take care of business on New Year's Eve against the Packers. Let's be honest, Vikings fans out there, that's not going to happen. The Lions are going to win the division, and they will most likely be the 3rd seed in the NFC. And of course, with the Lions versus the Cowboys game coming up, that could really depend on where the Lions end up, whether they end up over the Eagles or not. Of course, the Eagles would still have to lose one of those really easy games at the end of the season, so I would fully expect the Lions to be the 3rd seed in the NFC. And then we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Saints both battling it out for the NFC South. Now, for the Vikings' sake, Vikings fans out there, you should be rooting for the Bucs to win this division, because if you look at things from the wild card perspective, the Saints and Falcons are both behind the Vikings right now, and the Vikings would have that tiebreaker because they beat both the Saints, Falcons, and the Panthers early on in this season. But the Bucs beat the Vikings, which means if the Buccaneers lose the NFC South division, they'd move down to the wild card race, and then if they end up tied with the Vikings at the end of the season, they would end up getting that tiebreaker and making the playoffs over the Vikings. Of course, if the Vikings get swept the last 3 games of the season, it won't matter anyway. But we'll have to see what happens. But anyway, the Vikings fans should be rooting for the Buccaneers to take care of things and win this division. If they don't, it'll make things really interesting. I think that they will do that. I think the Saints just have so many problems right now, and I definitely think that they can get this job done. It really is a toss-up, but if I had to guess, I think it would still be the Buccaneers throughout the rest of this season. Their schedule is the Jags, the Saints, and the Panthers, so it really will come down to that game against the Saints at noon on Christmas or New Year's Eve, because the Saints, if you look at the rest of their schedule this season, they play the Rams, Bucks, and Falcons. So I don't expect them. The Rams game on this Thursday should be really interesting, and we'll see what happens there. But I just think it'll come down to that matchup against the Buccaneers, and it is at the Buccaneers in Tampa. So I think that might be the deciding factor for who wins that division. And so come on, in the NFC West, the 49ers are going to win that division. Actually, they already clinched it. So, my bad. They already did. They're 11-3. The next closest team is 7-7. So yeah, they already clinched it, and they basically, in my opinion, already clinched the number 1 seed. They haven't officially, but in order to lose that 1 seed, they would have to lose to either the Ravens, Commanders, or Rams. And even if they were to lose to the Rams or the Ravens in this next week game, they would have the 9-1 conference record that would outdo all of the different tiebreakers. So the Eagles would not be able to overtake them for that number 1 seed. So they basically have it. There's no way they're going to lose 2 of these next 3. So that's also that division as well. So now heading into really quickly the wild card matchups. You've got the Ravens at the 1 seed. You've got the Dolphins at the 2 seed right now. These are both seeds that I personally think will stay the same, because I think that it might be a little bit difficult for the Dolphins. You know what? I'm going to change my mind here. I'm going to say the Chiefs will leap over the Dolphins for that 2nd seed. I think the Ravens will hang on to their seed, because even losing to the 49ers potentially would still get them over the Chiefs, over that hump. The Dolphins, on the other hand, have 2 really tough matchups coming up. Even if they beat the Ravens, I still think they'll lose to the Cowboys or the other way around. And I think the Chiefs will probably win out the rest of the way. So I hate to say it, but I think the Dolphins will lose their potential divisional round home game, and the Chiefs will get that one in Arrowhead if both teams were to win in the first round of the playoffs. So it's Ravens, Chiefs, Dolphins. I think the Jags, I still think Trevor Lawrence will be able to lead the Jags over the Texans. I think that with the Jags, the conference record is both the same between these 2 teams right now, but the divisional tiebreaker is still in favor of the Jags, and so I feel like that's kind of all they need in order to win in this AFC South. And then the 5, 6, and 7 are really the ones that are in a really difficult state right now to predict. The Browns are at 9-5. They're hanging probably the best out of any of the teams in the wild card race, and they play the Texans, Jets, and Bengals to round out their season. And so the game between them and the Texans could easily decide who ends up taking one of those wild card spots. And I think the Browns will definitely get a spot. If I had to pick, I would say that they would still hold on to that 5th seed. But 6, 7, and 8 is really where it gets difficult, because we got the Bengals at 8-6. They've got Browning. Browning's been playing well, but still, can a backup QB hold his own and make it to the playoffs? And it's the same story with the Colts. Can the Colts and Gardner Minshew, lead the Colts past some of these other teams? And then we've got the Texans, who are 8-6, a huge win to be able to find a way to beat the Titans last week with C.J. Stroud out, because now Stroud will most likely be able to come back in this week in a very pivotal matchup. And then we've got the Bills. And I'm sorry to the Bengals and Colts. I feel like that's going to be a leapfrog situation. I think the Bills and Texans will end up taking the 6 and 7 seed. I think the Bills will be 6, and then the Texans will be 7. I think that these 2 teams are too good. I think that they're better than the Colts and Bengals. And Stroud, yes, is missing a couple of his best wide receivers, but I just feel like at the end of the day, the quarterbacks will be the story in the last few weeks of the season. And as good as Minshew has been playing, as good as Browning has been playing, I think the experience of Allen and the raw talent of Stroud will end up overtaking that, and they'll be 6 and 7 in this wild card race. And of course, we still have a couple of the teams in it, like the Steelers and Broncos, but I think the Broncos kind of lost the spark that they had mid-season. And then the Steelers offense, it's just a dumpster fire right now. Very bad football that they're playing. So I don't see the Steelers overcoming anything. And so I think it's down to those 4 teams, and I think it'll be the Bills and the Texans. So you've got your wild card and full standings for the AFC. In my opinion, the Ravens will be 1, then followed by the Chiefs, Dolphins, Jags, Browns, Bills, and Texans. That's just my personal prediction and opinion. In the NFC, the 49ers locked into that 1 seed. In my opinion, I don't see a situation like I mentioned where the Eagles will not win the division, so they'll most likely be 2. I don't see the Lions overtaking them. So the Lions will be 3, as they will find a way to win their division by beating the Vikings one of those 2 games. If they can't do that, they don't deserve the playoffs. And then I think the Buccaneers will stay in the 4 spot. and that will lead with the Cowboys being in the 5th spot. And this is where things get tough because you've got the Vikings, Rams, Seahawks, and Saints all at 7-7 right now, and the Falcons and Packers at 6-8 also have a chance. The Vikings have to play the Lions twice in 3 games, and I feel like they have to win one of those and then also beat the Packers if they're going to make the playoffs. I really do think that 9-8 will end up resulting in a playoff spot for the NFC. You look at the Eagles, or excuse me, the Seahawks, they just came off a win over the Eagles, and now they play the Titans, Steelers, and Cardinals. They've got one of the easiest matchups throughout the rest of the season. At the very least, I think they'll be 9-8, but I honestly feel like they could easily be 10-7. So I feel like the Seahawks are going to leapfrog everyone. They'll get that number 6 spot. I think the Seahawks are playing too good a football to not make the playoffs right now. So that will lead with the Vikings, Rams, and Saints battling it out for that 7th spot. If you look at the Rams' schedule coming through the rest of the season, they play the Saints, Giants, and then at the 49ers. Even if the 49ers sit their starters in that last game, gosh, I just don't know. I feel like I can't trust the Rams to make it through the rest of this season unscathed. So I'm going to have to give it to either the Saints or the Vikings. This is so tough. I can also definitely see the Packers being really annoying and having a resurgence. They do play the Panthers, Vikings, and Bears. If they beat the Vikings, they can still get 9-8 and also sneak in. This is a tough one. It really is going to be such a toss-up in the last few weeks of the season. The Saints play the Rams, Bucks, and Falcons. So, it could definitely come down also to if the Saints beat the Rams this week on Thursday Night Football, they could make the playoffs. If the Rams beat them, they could make the playoffs. It is at the Rams. You know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm making an executive decision after looking at these teams, even after saying I didn't think I trusted the Rams. I'm changing it again. I'm saying the Rams. I gotta trust Stafford in this situation because I'm looking at the Saints, and I mean the quarterback situation they're in. I'm looking at the Vikings where Nick Mullins is their starting QB. Right now, like I said in the AFC, I think the quarterbacks on each team might end up being the factor throughout the rest of these few weeks. This is where legends are made in the last few weeks of the regular season in the playoff push. Matthew Stafford has done this way too many times. Obviously, with the Lions, he was dealt a bad hand, but then he got the job done with the Rams in seasons past. I got to roll with the QB that I have the most trust in, who's had the most experience in these situations. I'm going to go with Stafford and the Rams. So my lineup for the NFC playoffs is the 49ers at 1, followed by the Eagles, Lions, Bucks at 4, rounding out the divisions, and then I'll have the Cowboys at 5, the Seahawks at 6, and then the Rams at 7, where they are already sitting at this exact moment. So things could change a lot. I could be completely proven wrong over the last few weeks, and obviously the Rams and Saints game will be the first indicator of whether or not I'll be right or wrong. But this is going to be such an exciting week of matchups, and the rest of the season as well. It should be so fun over the Christmas season, over the New Year's weekend, and there's going to be so many amazing matchups. I hope you're able to watch a lot of them and also spend time with friends and family as well over this Christmas season. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you still get the time off from work because, it's still a winter holiday. You should get a break. Just take that time if you don't celebrate Christmas to just take a break, either hang out with friends or just sit and relax because everyone knows at this point we don't do that enough either. So have a great holiday season no matter how you celebrate it, and hopefully we get some good games throughout this week and you have just a good week of relaxation and reflection. So let me know in the comments what you think. If you disagree with my predictions, let me know what you think should happen either in these divisions or in these wild card spots. I always love seeing everyone's opinions in the comments because everyone does have different opinions, and that's what makes sports beautiful, is everyone can debate back and forth and have some fun doing it. So thank you so much for watching this one. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you on the flip side.